Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into, I think, one of the most fundamental tensions in our ethical lives.
It really is. It's a conflict we all navigate every single day,
Mm,
often without even, putting a name to it.
exactly. And it's this question, does intent or consequence hold more moral weight? When you're judging an action, what really matters more? What somebody meant to do or what actually happened as a result?
And that friction, that is the core of our deep dive today.
It is such a powerful and a really deeply human dilemma.
It is, because our moral intuition is, well, it's genuinely fractured on this point. It pulls us in two different directions at once.
That's a great way to put it.
We all want to live in a world where people are judged by their hearts, by what's inside.
Mm.
But we also live in a world where, tangible suffering and harm are very, very real.
And you can hear that conflict built right into our language.
Oh, all the time.
When someone fails, and maybe fails spectacularly, the easiest shield is, but they meant well.
Yes, it's an appeal to their purity of motive.
Right, we appeal to the internal, the motive, the effort. It's a way to protect the actor from, I guess, the brutal reality of the result.
But then, inevitably, that sort of cold voice of reality steps in.
And it delivers the hammer blow. I don't care what you meant, look what happened.
Exactly. And that just shifts the focus entirely. It moves from the internal world of the person
Yep.
to the external, tangible results, the lives affected, the broken things left behind.
And that contrast, that deep necessary tension, that's precisely what we're exploring today.
Right. We're doing a deep dive into the source material, moral weights, navigating intention and consequence.
Our mission here is to move past that simple binary choice, intent or consequence, and try to build a more rigorous, nuanced framework.
A framework for judging both the actions and the character of the people involved.
Yeah.
We really need to understand why both sides of this argument feel so morally non-negotiable.
To really frame this discussion, the source material starts us off with two simple thought experiments, and they force us to confront this tension directly.
They're perfect. They encapsulate the moral bind. They pit character against result in a really stark way.
So the first one is case A, good intention, bad outcome. Imagine you're trying to help a friend who's facing a really difficult decision.
Okay.
Maybe they're thinking of leaving a stable job for like a passion project or navigating a really complex family issue.
So high stakes stuff.
High stakes. And you spend countless hours researching their options, you're consulting people you know, and you put together what you genuinely believe is the best, most caring advice possible.
So your motive is pristine.
Absolutely pristine. Pure friendship, pure desire to see them flourish. They take your advice and, well, due to external factors, maybe an economic downturn, or just sheer bad luck, things neither of you could have fully controlled.
Okay.
Their life, unfortunately, gets significantly worse. They lose money, or the family relationship just breaks down faster.
Wow. Okay, so that's the classic tragedy, isn't it? Goodwill meeting a terrible result. The inner moral state of the person giving the advice was, impeccable. They acted out of genuine concern, diligence, kindness,
All the right things.
and yet the resulting impact was negative, painful, and maybe even long-lasting for their friend. We just intuitively feel sorry for the actor in this scenario, don't we? We know they acted from the best part of themselves.
We do. But now let's contrast that really dramatically with case B, bad intention, good outcome.
Okay, the flip side.
The flip side. So imagine you're in a professional environment, a meeting, and you truly dislike a colleague. You can't stand them.
Right.
And you formulate this snide, cutting comment, or maybe you take an action that's specifically designed to embarrass them, trip them up, make them look incompetent in front of management.
So you're intending sabotage.
Yeah.
Pure and simple.
Pure and simple. But due to some, highly idiosyncratic circumstance, maybe your malicious comment forces them to improvise a brilliant, novel solution to a problem on the spot,
I see where this is going.
or it accidentally highlights a skill they were too shy to mention. The manager sees this, interprets your action completely differently, and they end up getting a major promotion.
Entirely because of your malicious act.
Entirely.
So here, the intent is morally just, indefensible.
Yeah.
You tried to cause professional, emotional, maybe even financial harm. You acted out of pure malice.
Yes.
But the outcome?
Yeah.
The colleague benefited massively. They got a promotion, a better life trajectory, all because you tried to be evil and failed.
You failed to be a villain, and you accidentally played the role of a hero.
Wow.
So here is the central puzzle we are trying to solve for you. When you look at the person involved, who is the more morally good agent?
Is it the person in case A, with the kind intentions and the terrible
Or
outcomes.
the person in case B with the bad intentions who just stumbled into a great outcome.
Which compass reading do we trust more? The heart or the visible results on the ground?
That's the question. And to figure that out, I think we have to start by acknowledging the strength of that first position, the one that prioritizes our inner life.
Let's do it. Let's look at the strong case for intentions.
Okay, so when we instinctively react to case A, the well-meaning friend who accidentally caused harm, our first inclination for most of us is to defend them.
It is. We lean toward the person with the good heart.
So why is that? What is it about the inner life, the motive, that commands such deep moral respect from us?
I think it's because intention reveals character. And character is fundamentally what we are judging when we look at a person's moral fiber.
Character, not the action itself.
Not just the action. The source material really emphasizes that intentions show what kind of person you are becoming. Our actions are fleeting, they happen in a moment, but the motives behind them, those are habit forming.
That's a really key distinction, the single action versus the formation of character over time.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you consistently try to act generously, honestly, and kindly, even if you sometimes make clumsy mistakes, you are actively building and reinforcing a good moral identity.
So it's about the effort, the striving.
That internal striving toward virtue is what we praise. It means the person is, reliable, trustworthy. They're acting from a source of goodness.
And the opposite is true too.
Of course, if someone acts out of pure selfishness or cruelty, that intention stains the action instantly, regardless of the result. It tells us they have willfully chosen a path toward becoming a selfish or a cruel person.
So the intent is like the moral root of the behavior. It's the internal movement that matters most for judging the actor.
The actor, yes. And this framework explains why we reserve our highest moral praise and our deepest blame.
How so?
We praise the hero not just for the success of their rescue, but because they tried to do the right thing, often at great personal cost, even if the attempt fails.
Right, right. Like a lifeboat captain who risks everything to save someone who's drowning, but then the person slips away in the waves anyway.
Exactly. The captain's action is still seen as morally laudable, heroic even.
We separate the moral worth of the action from the physical success of the outcome.
We have to. The moral courage was demonstrated in the trying. Likewise, we blame the villain even if their schemes fail completely.
If someone sets out to commit fraud, but the bank transaction fails because of a technical error.
We don't acquit them. We don't say, oh, well, no harm, no foul. The moral stain is the bad intent itself. That inner decision to violate moral boundaries remains, even if luck, turns the outcome positive, like in our case B example.
This really speaks to the whole concept of moral luck, doesn't it? It feels like we're trying to insulate morality from chance.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
It introduces the principle of fairness in judgment. Why should your moral worth be determined by random external chance?
It seems profoundly unfair to judge someone purely by bad luck if they acted with diligence and care and goodwill.
Exactly. If you are doing your level best to follow the right principles, but a thunderstorm or a technical glitch or just the unpredictable behavior of another person intervenes, should your entire moral worth be negated by factors completely outside your control?
No, that seems to be the entire point of emphasizing intent. It protects the moral agent from the chaos of the universe.
It does. We want a framework where we are judged by what we can control, our will, our effort, our motives, not by what we cannot control, which are the eventual outcomes.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because this emphasis on intent connects directly to a major family of moral philosophy.
A really profound one. We're talking about the intention-duty principle framework, which is often called deontology. It's most famously associated with thinkers like Immanuel Kant.
Okay, let's spend a minute unpacking that philosophical foundation. It's often a bit more rigid than people realize. When we focus on duty and principle, what is the ultimate moral concern?
The ultimate moral concern is adherence to universal moral rules and acting with a truly good will. The moral rightness of an action is based on that adherence, not on the resulting happiness or suffering.
So an action is moral if it's done because it's the right thing to do, not because the beneficial result it might produce.
You've got it. It's about the motive behind the rule following.
So the examples here aren't about, calculating how to minimize harm. It's about acting correctly according to a moral standard.
Exactly. Take the famous example of promise keeping. From this perspective, you keep a promise not because it will make the other person happy or because breaking it would cause chaos.
You keep it just because keeping promises is the rule.
Because keeping promises is a necessary principle for trust and social order. If you keep a promise only because you're afraid of the consequences of breaking it, your action is, legally fine, but it has no moral worth in this framework.
It's morally inert.
Morally inert,
Yeah.
that's the term. And the same thing applies to honesty. Telling the truth is right because it respects the dignity and rationality of other people.
Treating them as ends in themselves, not as means to an end.
Precisely. So telling the truth is an imperative, a duty. The good intention, in this case, is the intention to follow the rule of truth-telling.
Even if the result of telling the absolute truth is, well, temporary awkwardness or even suffering for the person who hears it.
Even then. Let's say you have to tell a painful but necessary truth about a situation. This view argues that you did what you ought to do. You acted in good faith, you respected the rule, that moral worth is secured.
So the key takeaway for this deontological view is really powerful. Consequences matter, of course they do, because they affect the world.
But they are not the ultimate measure of right and wrong.
The ultimate measure resides solely in the motive and the principle that was followed.
It gives us this sense of moral purity. It separates our inner self from the external world's messy, unpredictable results.
And that explains exactly why we instinctively want to defend the actor in Case A. They followed the duty of friendship. They acted out of genuine concern.
They are morally good, even if they were unlucky. We value the moral agent who is striving to be good, focusing on who they are inside.
But, and this is a big but, if we live entirely in that internal world, we pretty quickly run into some major problems of accountability.
And that leads us directly to the counterargument, the other side of the coin. So now we have to dramatically shift our focus. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, we find that the argument for consequences is, well, it's equally powerful. It's equally non-negotiable.
Morality can't just exist as a pristine intention in your heart.
It can't. The moment an action leaves you, it enters the public sphere and it starts affecting actual lives. Consequences focus on that unavoidable reality.
This is where our actor from Case A starts to look, well, a little more problematic. They meant well, they're a good person, but they made their friend's life demonstrably worse.
And the question becomes, at what point does the actual, tangible, measurable harm override the good intention?
Right. Can you just repeatedly ruin lives, wave your hands, and say, but my heart was pure?
The strength of the case for consequences really lies in their tangibility. Intentions are internal, they're subjective, often they're invisible to other people.
But consequences are external. They're objective.
And they're measured in well-being or injury or suffering or flourishing. We have to look at the real-world impact. Who gets harmed, who benefits, and how much suffering or happiness is created. These are tangible metrics. They affect the quality of life on Earth, and they demand moral consideration.
The bottom line is that consequences are what people actually have to live with.
That's it.
We live with the results, not with the noble or ignoble motives of the people involved. If your intentions are pure, but your actions lead to bankruptcy or sickness for someone else, the purity of your intent offers absolutely no practical comfort or relief to the injured party.
This is so vital when we talk about public ethics and accountability in professional spheres.
Like in medicine or politics?
Critical fields like politics, finance, medicine, law, engineering. In these fields, consequences aren't abstract. They could be matters of life or death or of mass instability.
So if a municipal finance officer acts with the best intention, say they desperately want to save taxpayers' money,
Right.
but they make an ill-advised, reckless investment that bankrupts the city pension fund.
The defense, I meant well for the city, offers no remedy whatsoever to the retired workers who just lost their life savings.
That is accountability in its rawest form. The harm demands a response, and often it demands punishment or restitution, regardless of the warm, fuzzy feelings the perpetrator had about their initial goals.
Exactly. This is where we have to emphasize responsibility over motive. If your good intentions repeatedly cause harm because you are consistently careless or consistently ignorant or you consistently fail to check facts, you have to be held accountable.
The outcome demands responsibility, regardless of the motive.
Think of a surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have the most compassionate heart in the world, if they routinely cause injury because they refuse to update their skills or are just plain sloppy.
The moral value of their good intention is quickly eclipsed by the real suffering they're causing.
Of course it is. Their job requires competence, not just good wishes.
And this perspective is deeply rooted in that second great family of moral philosophy.
It is. We are now squarely in the domain of consequence-outcome utility ethics. Most people know this as utilitarianism.
And this view radically shifts the focus.
It does. An action is right or wrong based mainly, or even entirely, on its effects on overall well-being, suffering, and happiness.
So if the action produces a net positive balance of happiness over suffering, it's a good action. The result is the defining characteristic of moral goodness.
That is the core thesis. An action is good if it maximizes utility, if it reduces suffering, increases flourishing, or produces the best overall outcomes for the greatest number of people.
What happens to intentions in this framework?
Intentions of this framework, they still matter, but they get relegated to a secondary status. There may be a good clue to predict what future results might look like.
Because people with good intentions usually get better results than people with bad ones.
Usually, yes. But they are not the core of morality itself. The result is the core.
This philosophical engine completely changes how we view our initial dilemma. So in the case B scenario, the malicious person who accidentally helped their colleague get a promotion.
The consequence utility view would have to lean toward a positive evaluation of the action.
Of the action, okay.
Correct. The act, however it was motivated, resulted in a net positive outcome. There was greater flourishing for the colleague, maybe a better contribution to the economy, and definitely increased happiness for that individual.
The utility gained is what matters.
And the malice of the actor is seen as an unfortunate, but ultimately an irrelevant psychological footnote.
And conversely, in case A, the person who genuinely tried to help but failed and caused harm.
This view sees a moral failure.
Because measurable suffering was created.
Regardless of the good intentions.
Yeah.
They failed the primary moral test, producing good results. The consequence-focused verdict is pretty clear. Saying, I meant well does not fully excuse harmful results, especially if those results were predictable or preventable.
The tension here is just so real, because both of these views seem necessary for a stable society.
They are. We need people whose motives we can trust. That's the intent side. But we also desperately need them to produce good, life-affirming results. That's the consequence side.
And the real challenge, I guess, lies in that messy middle ground, where neither the intent is perfectly pure, nor the consequences are guaranteed.
And that's exactly where we need to go next. That brings us to the moment we promise you, the listener. The space where this simple black and white ethical analysis just breaks down.
Okay, so that messy middle ground is where ethical maturity really lives. This is the space where the simple intent versus consequence analysis fails us.
It does. And it's where we have to introduce concepts like foresight and competence to build a more robust judgment framework.
Let's start with foresight, what we knew or what we should have known. This introduces the idea of neglect.
Yes. We're moving beyond a simple binary of good or evil intentions. What about all those cases where there was no direct intention to cause harm, but there was a significant degree of, say, carelessness or indifference or just laziness involved?
This feels critical because most moral failures in the modern world aren't committed by, mustache-twirling villains aiming for destruction.
No, not at all. They're committed by well-meaning but negligent actors. Let's revisit that classic example, the texting and driving example.
Okay.
You're texting and driving just a little. You have absolutely no intention of hurting anyone. You're just bored or you're eager to get a message out. But you cause a devastating accident.
Can you claim moral cleanliness because you lacked a direct intent to injure?
Instinctively, we all recoil from that defense, don't we?
Yeah.
We recognize that claiming I didn't intend to crash is just not morally satisfying.
Not at all.
And the reason is complex. You can't absolve yourself simply by claiming a lack of direct intent to harm. Why? Because you had a moral duty of care.
A duty of care.
You knowingly engaged in an activity that significantly increases the probability of disaster. You intended to take a risk, and crucially, you could have reasonably foreseen the danger.
So the moral failure happened the moment you chose carelessness and convenience over your duty and safety.
Yes. The action texting while operating a dangerous machine is morally compromised even before the actual accident happens. The action itself carries an inherent moral weight based on that foreseeable risk.
It does. This is why the source material stresses that the evaluation here requires more than just 2 points. It's not just motive and result. To fully capture moral reality, we need what it calls the moral triad.
Let's nail down the components of that triad because this is essential for our nuanced framework.
Okay.
The moral triad for evaluation often requires 3 points. First, intention. What were you aiming at? Simple, objective, good or bad.
Okay, straightforward.
Second, foresight. What did you know, or what should you have known about the likely outcomes or risks?
The should have known part is key there.
It's the whole game. And third, outcome. What actually happened?
And negligence, then, is the failure in that second point, foresight.
Exactly. Negligence proves you can be morally responsible even without a direct intention to harm if you ignored foreseeable consequences. That disregard is itself a moral failure, and it's distinct from the intent to cause direct harm.
Okay, so let's apply that new framework back to case A. The friend gives advice with good intention, but the outcome is terrible.
Right. If we just assume it was pure bad luck, they look okay.
But if, however, the friend had refused to research the advice or had given advice on a highly complex legal matter when they had zero legal training,
Then the incident shifts.
Mhm.
It's no longer just bad luck. It's negligence piled on top of a good intention.
it becomes morally incomplete.
It does. And this analysis of negligence starts to put critical constraints on how far good intentions can really take you. If your heart is in the right place, but you are consistently reckless or incompetent in acting on that intention, your motive starts to look lazy, or worse, arrogant.
And that brings us to the next fascinating area, when good intentions become dangerous.
We see this all the time, where good intentions are used as a moral shield against any and all criticism, even when the actor is causing consistent, systemic harm.
That shield, I was just trying to help, it starts to lose its moral weight when the help is repeatedly destructive.
It does, especially when it's destructive because it's uninformed or arrogant. Good intentions in that context are simply not enough. They can be shallow, even selfish, if the primary goal is making the actor feel good about themselves rather than ensuring the recipient is genuinely helped.
Can you give us a vivid example of that arrogance of intention?
Absolutely. Think about the field of, say, international aid or volunteerism.
Oh, yeah.
People travel driven by this pure good intention to save or fix poverty in other cultures. But often, without competence, without humility, and without understanding the local context, they end up causing severe long-term damage.
Like what?
They disrupt local economies, they install non-sustainable infrastructure, or they simply boost their own savior complexes while extracting cultural knowledge without permission. Their intention was good, but it was coupled with a profound arrogance that discounted the complexity of the situation and, crucially, the expertise of local people.
They intended to do good, but they failed the foresight test and the competence test, and that led to harm.
It's the moral equivalent of wanting to perform heart surgery because you have a compassionate heart, but refusing to attend medical school.
That's a perfect analogy.
The moral requirement here is clear. Good intentions must be paired with humility and competence. It is not enough to want good. We must learn how to do good wisely.
So the moral failure here isn't malice. It's the laziness of not ensuring our intention translates into effective, safe reality.
If you intend to help, but you refuse to educate yourself on the best, safest methods, your intention is morally incomplete. You're holding yourself to account for the foreseeable gap between your desire and your ability.
But let's pause and maintain that necessary balance here. If we hold people to the standard of foresight and consequences, do we risk swinging too far toward that cold calculation of utility? Is there a danger in focusing only on outcomes?
Oh, there's a massive moral danger, and it's why our initial instinct to value intent is so important, and we can't let go of it.
What's the danger?
If we focus exclusively on results, the bottom line, the metrics, the maximization of happiness, we encourage cold calculation. This framework suggests that if the results are good, the means don't matter and the motives are irrelevant.
And if motives are irrelevant, then things like integrity and sincerity and loyalty, they become disposable tools.
They do. A person might act kindly in public only because it generates a net positive result, a utility gain, not because they genuinely care. They're optimizing for appearance, not for virtue.
A world where people do good without actually caring about others feels shallow and unstable.
It's incredibly unstable. We rely on the internal compass of others. We need to believe that our leaders, our partners, our colleagues are acting from a place of genuine concern, honesty, and fairness. Without that inner life, the whole moral system collapses into pure transactional calculation.
Let's think back to Case B, the malicious saboteur who accidentally created a great outcome.
Right.
We celebrate the promotion, of course, but we still harbor a deep moral condemnation for the actor. We don't want to live next to people who are actively trying to harm us, even if they're technically incompetent at their villainy.
Exactly. If someone saves 10 lives, but does so purely for the sake of a massive ego boost and intends to manipulate public opinion afterward, we recognize the life-saving act as good, but we feel a genuine lack in the person's moral character.
We want moral agents whose hearts and actions are synchronized.
That's it. It seems the journey to moral maturity is realizing that this isn't an either question, it's a question of integration.
And that sets us up perfectly for the synthesis. We have these two powerful competing truths. How does a mature morality reconcile them?
What's fascinating here is that maybe asking which one matters more is inherently the wrong approach.
Because it frames morality as a zero-sum game.
Exactly. A mature morality, one that reflects the true complexity of the source material, insists on holding both intentions and consequences at the same time. They serve different but equally vital functions in our moral assessment.
So we're not searching for a single ethical rule to apply to everything. We're deploying different criteria depending on what exactly we're trying to judge.
You've got it. We have to separate the judgment of the person from the judgment of the action.
Okay, let's break down those criteria for moral evaluation in this integrated framework.
Okay, so first, for judging a person's character and identity, intentions matter absolutely. They reveal who the person is trying to become. Are they striving for generosity, for honesty, for faithfulness? This internal striving is the core of their moral identity, and it determines their trustworthiness.
Okay, so that's for the person. What about the action?
Second, for judging the impact, the effect, and the acceptability of an action in the world. Consequences matter absolutely. This is external, and it is non-negotiable. People live with the results, not with our noble motives.
So if the consequences are devastating,
The action must be condemned or restricted or corrected regardless of the person's character.
this changes the entire assessment of our initial cases then.
It does. When we apply this mature framework, the actor in case A, good intent, bad outcome, is morally superior as a person to the actor in case B, bad intent, good outcome.
We praise A's character and we condemn B's character.
But, and this is the key, the action in case B is superior to the action in case A. We praise B's results and we condemn A's results.
The synthesis forces us to assign moral worth to the character while simultaneously demanding accountability for the action's practical impact.
And the goal, then, is to become the agent whose character we would praise and whose actions we would celebrate.
That brings us to the principle for moral growth. If we want to be morally good agents who can bridge this gap, we can't just stop at, wishing people well.
No. We need three things for sustained moral growth, as the source material suggests. Good intentions, a growing awareness of consequences, that's foresight, and the humility to learn from mistakes and admit when we've been negligent.
That humility seems to be the bridge between intention and consequence.
It is. It stops good intentions from becoming arrogant or dangerous.
So if the person in case A had more foresight and competence, if they had recognized the limits of their own knowledge,
They might have given less specific advice, or maybe directed their friend toward a professional. Their intention would still be pure, but their action would have been wise.
Exactly. So the action plan for you, the listener, isn't passive wishing. It's active, competent engagement with reality.
You aim for good intentions, but then you must do the hard work. You have to educate yourself, understand the likely consequences of your actions, that's the foresight element, and seek out the necessary competence to execute your goodwill safely.
And critically, you must take responsibility for outcomes, especially when you could have known better, stepping up immediately when negligence leads to harm.
That's it.
Okay, let's synthesize this into the final comprehensive answer for the listener. This is where we reconcile those two powerful competing intuitions into a unified framework.
The synthesis is this. Intentions matter profoundly because they are the compass of the soul. They show what we care about and what kind of person we are trying to be. They are the heart of morality.
But consequences matter equally profoundly because real people are helped or harmed by what we do, regardless of our inner story. They are the measurable body of morality.
And crucially, we have to acknowledge the danger zones we identified through the moral triad. Good intentions without attention to consequences, without foresight and competence, can be naive or lazy or actively dangerous.
It leads to negligence and arrogance.
And on the flip side, good consequences achieved without honest, sincere intentions, without integrity, can be manipulative, hollow, and ultimately undermine the trust and the moral fabric of society.
So, in a mature morality, we do not choose one over the other. We learn to hold both. We cultivate sincere, compassionate motives.
But we simultaneously educate ourselves deeply about the likely impact of our actions.
And we take responsibility not only for what we meant to do, but also for what we actually did.
That is the true sign of moral maturity, integrating inner sincerity with outer accountability.
This framework forces us to recognize that moral action is a constant, difficult feedback loop. It's not enough to just be a good person in terms of your intent.
You must also constantly strive to be an effective person in terms of your consequences. And when you fail in effectiveness, even if your heart was pure, you have to acknowledge the consequence and improve your competence.
This really elevates the moral discussion beyond simple judgment. It makes morality a dynamic, evolving discipline, one that requires constant refinement of both our character and our skills.
Think about the difference between a passive and an active intention. A passive good intention is simply wishing someone well.
Right. I hope things work out for you.
An active good intention involves the will, the effort, and the resources required to translate that wish into a predictable, positive outcome. The mature moral agent recognizes that the burden of translation from motive to result is part of the moral mandate.
And that burden includes recognizing when our own competence ends.
Oh, absolutely.
If your good intention leads you to try to fix a complex problem you don't understand, the chaos that follows isn't just bad luck.
It's a failure of foresight and humility, which are themselves moral virtues. It's the opposite of humility. Humility dictates that we must acknowledge the limits of our own competence and choose actions that respect those limits.
And the arrogance of assuming that a pure heart is sufficient justification for a complex intervention
Is one of the most common moral failings discussed in the source material.
That's a powerful indictment of moral complacency. It suggests that if we truly intend good, we must also intend to acquire the knowledge necessary to achieve that good safely and effectively.
Indeed. We must demand of ourselves not just a sincere motive, but intelligent action. That's the only way to minimize the tragic outcomes of Case A, while simultaneously maximizing the trustworthiness and integrity that was so utterly lacking in Case B. #outro.
Wow. This has been a deeply challenging and I think ultimately a really rewarding deep dive into this fundamental ethical conflict.
It really gets to the heart of what it means to be a good person acting in a complicated world.
It does. We started with that simple binary choice. We looked at the weight of intentions, emphasizing character, duty, and fairness. And then we examined the weight of consequences, focusing on impact, utility, and real-world accountability.
And we realize that true moral maturity lies in the intersection of both, a synthesis that combines competence with compassion, informed by that moral triad of intention, foresight, and outcome.
The initial puzzle of Case A versus Case B is resolved not by picking a winner,
But by recognizing that A has the greater moral character, while B's action has the greater practical impact. Our moral goal should be to be neither A nor B, but a hybrid.
an agent whose good results flow reliably from a good heart that is tempered by competence and humility.
Well said.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to explore on your own. When you look back at your own life, at failures where you have appealed to good intentions to excuse mistake, were those failures genuinely unpredictable? Were they truly an act of moral bad luck?
Or were they, upon closer inspection, the result of a lack of competence, a failure of foresight, or maybe an unwillingness to admit that your desire to help outpaced your actual ability to do so?
That growth in awareness, that shift from blaming external luck to accepting internal responsibility for competence.
That is the key to becoming a truly mature moral agent. The ultimate moral task is to close the gap between what you want to achieve and what you are capable of achieving, ensuring that your intentions are backed by action and foresight.
Something for you to mull or explore on your own until next time.